I feel the weight breaking away. Nothing can hold me down. I see the sky starting to cry, but I'm not falling, not this time.
Oh, hi everyone, it's winter outside, and I'm currently using AI to take out the background, so we'll see if it works. Hi, I'm Jarv. I'm the executive producer behind The Few Ones. The Few Ones, you say? That was a Freudian slip. My bad. I'm the executive producer behind The Few Revelations. And TM, trademarked, not registered, trademarked. So, here we go. This is why I hate making content with me, but I love live streaming. It's like I just want to speak. I don't even have a script for this. I have plenty of scripts that, yes, I've got gloves on. It's winter outside. I'm wearing a winter hat. I'm ready to go. Plenty of scripts. I've got plenty of scripts. Okay? Plenty of scripts, and I use them. I used to be a writer. Now I'm a prompter, but I'm still a writer. So I make sure that everything that's written is good to go. And I edit it, but I still do a lot of writing. So a little bit about our production here at Project Exodus, E+ Studios, is we use AI to complement, augment, and make more affordable and more efficient human beings. So in other words, when you see, let's say, a Hollywood movie, right, and it's got cool CGI, and you've got, it's so cool, it's so exciting, and you walk out of that and you're like, wow. The only problem is, you walk out of that and it's just kind of like, well, now what? It's like that feeling of, whoa, anything is possible, amazing story, cool, there'll be another one. And then it's just kind of like, ooh. And that's it. It's basically gone. It's gone. And that's fine, whatever. But what if you could get that feeling to like roll into an entire lifetime? So basically, if you have that feeling of anything is possible, we can accomplish cool things, this movie is amazing, and then it goes, way, that's a reality check. Everything is mundane, it's boring, nothing is possible. But reality can be way more exciting than that. And so here's a side click somewhere on the screen where you can check out Project Exodus, E+ Studios, where we bring that excitement to you in a way that's bound to our own reality with exohumanism. So you can find out more about exohumanism, hopefully right there, and you can find out more about Project Exodus right about there. Project Exodus, E+ Studios, is a new branch of the company dedicated, it's this specific main production wing of the company, dedicated to bring exohuman, pro-human, reality-based entertainment that you can be a part of. And the way that you're a part of it is it's generally speaking exohuman entertainment. What that means is a little bit more complicated than we can go into today, but it's kind of like saying it's more of a movement. a cultural movement than just a movie that you watch. Because what we are doing here, exohumanism, starts with the first M of the 5 M's. Message, method, motivation, movement, and momentum. I swear this is not to make my hands look bigger. I'm making sure I got real hands. I'm not a robot. I just like to wear gloves, so I don't have to wash them so much. And so basically, the 5 M's, you've got to start first with the message. And so the message, the 5 M's, are to help create a new culture from the ground up, exohuman culture, to create a new civilization from the ground up, the exohuman civilization. And you can have multiple exohuman civilizations to create alliance of countries that are exohuman for the function of going forth. And you can find out more about exohumanism. Like I said, it's going to be permanently pinned up there, and more about Project Exodus up there. But this video is about the few revelations. So the few revelations is set in a time or place or reality quite similar to our own, but there's an emphasis on the supernatural UFO-like experiences that people have, in the sense that instead of just like these discs that are flying around, occasionally they might have some sort of sightings like that, but what they end up getting more recently in this timeline is they get these cubes that come down, and they're like these different colored cubes, and there's a whole community that is interested in these different colored cubes, and it's kind of hard to tell all of this story with just one cinema series. And so the plan is to, in fact, crowdfund the few revelations, which is the beginning. So it's not that I'm actually just a logo on the screen, but the reason why usually I don't record myself is because my camera sucks. OBS, when it runs and records me, it's like, what is he? What gestures are he doing? Is he what's going on here? And so basically, this is just the camera running, and so basically, what we're doing with the few revelations is an introduction to this alternate timeline with a supernatural, where there's a magnificent, great historical cycle that's written to the stars themselves. This every 26,000 years, and I will be ending this clip, putting this all together, and adding a picture, probably at the end of this, showing you the cycle of 26,000 years, breaking down, written into the stars themselves. And so the few revelations follows the first group of people in the most important time of this cycle, at the climax period before the cycle kind of resets. And maybe usually the cycle resets at a certain time, around the time of Sagittarius and right before Scorpio. But then, in this case, it's a time that's more similar to our own Pisces Aquarius. So basically what happens is Fergus comes in, and I don't want to spoil anything, but this is inspired by reality. And the cool thing about it is the 26,000 year cycle is inspired by our own cycle that totally doesn't exist. Don't look into it. So the point is, what we have here is, I'm going to go ahead and switch to the image, and with the images that I'm looking up, I will be putting up on the screen right now. And so basically for this entire clip, and be putting all the clips together for this pitch, if you want to call it pitch, it's already all out there in the text. So what we have here is we have the 13, is that 13? 1? Yeah, including Figus 13. So we have the 12 or 13 main cycles of the 26,000 year cycle. So what we have here, starting here, is we have, where does it start? Well, I would say it probably starts at Scorpio. Then it goes to Libra, Virgo, Leo, Cancer, Gemini, Taurus, Aries, Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn, Sagittarius. And then Ophiuchus pops his little bum in there, in between Sagittarius and Scorpio. Now, this cycle and their timeline happens every 26,000 years. And right about the time period where Ophiuchus is, there's a resetting of the time. And then basically it continues on. But what's different about this time than our reality is that in their reality, the time at which Sagittarius and Scorpio perhaps are, getting ready to transition. Well, it's either that or it's happening a little earlier this cycle. But the point is, it's essentially our Aquarius is when their story is happening. And the reason why this is such a fascinating story and the few revelations is because it's actually inspired by not just astrology, but the history of our own planet Earth. As you can see here, we have planet Earth in the middle. And if you know your astrology, you're probably used to these symbols, these star constellations. But if you're not, basically every 2,000 years, there is a new age. Every 26,000 years-ish, there's a new great age. And what we see, roughly every 3 cycles, every 2,000, 6,000 years, they say, every roughly 6,000 years, there's some sort of cataclysm that has historical evidence to have happening here on planet Earth, our planet Earth. Oops, wasn't supposed to let that out. But so basically, we're basing this fiction off of our own historical record. In roughly 5,000 years ago, historically, is when the Great Flood from the Bible happened, and then roughly 11 to 13,000 years ago is what period is known as the Younger Dryas, where there was a lot of floods, and only hundreds of millions of floods, and never anything catastrophic. But there's actually a lot of evidence that there was massive mud flows and volcanic eruptions during that time period, 11,000 years ago, and that's when Atlantis, which definitely was just a joke that Plato was memeing on us, and definitely not something he should take seriously because he was serious about everything else, but Atlantis he was totally just using as a metaphor. Don't look into it. Atlantis, or as the ancient Egyptians, wait, he got the idea from the ancient Egyptians? Were they just saying it was a metaphor? Or is it just a metaphor for the ancient Egyptians? The ancient Egyptians talked about the place that the Greeks called Atlantis, and the Egyptians called it primordials, primals, primordius, maybe. And basically, that was 11,000 years ago. So that's in our own history. Those are the accusations by the Egyptians and by Plato that roughly 11,000 years ago, Atlantis got covered in mud flow or a flood, and Ragnarok is inspired by this as a predictory cycle of the future, meaning you can predict the future by seeing the past. And so what we see here with this cycle, inspired by the ancients and inspired by history and inspired by the archaeological evidence, this, however, is the cycle that would be closest representing our own timeline, and this is what we use for their timeline. So their timeline's actually not that different, but it canonizes this theory. So for some, that's going to be fiction because some people don't believe in stars and some people don't believe in floods. So you have to just give it to them that they're allowed to not believe in floods and stars. But for this timeline, for the people in this show, this is real, and they will start finding out about this cycle. And in this story, this fictional story we're making here at Project Exodus E Plus Studios, what we have is a story of 13 individuals, but there's actually technically 18 and potentially 88. Don't look into constellations. And basically, so basically what we have here is we have some of these characters of the first episode, which we are currently in development on, the pilot episode. We're about halfway at this point. We could definitely use funding to finish the episode. It may not be required, but it's definitely going to be way better when fully funded. And for the future episodes, we're probably going to need to raise at least some money to build it out. But basically, what we have here, and it's going to be a photorealistic, almost like a live action people show. So we have tons of trailers that you can check out. Some of them are absolutely amazing. Some of them are really cool. Some of them are just okay, but a lot of them are just mind-blowingly badass. And what I would really like to do is do one show with AI, and then start a second show or second season of that show, and also make that with AI. And then by then we might have enough funding to make an actual real person show that I hinted at the beginning of this, but I won't do a callback. I won't tell you what it's called. And that third show or third season is a whole separate show. The idea that will take place after these first two. So if we can get this fully funded, in the future, we plan to do a show with real people. That's always what I always wanted to do, but it requires money, and Hollywood, to make a show would require like $350 million or something like that. Maybe only 13 million, I don't know. But the point is, our budget is currently $0. So if we can transition that number to like maybe 100,000, that's a pretty decent first season for the few revelations. If we were to transition the number to a more reasonable number, like let's say 10 million, then we could maybe make that show with real people. But ideally, we want to at least make the first season of the few revelations, and then start the second season, which might be called something similar to that. And basically, what we have here is we already have the story. And by the way, it's written by this guy here in orange. It's not written by AI. Okay, I use AI as a tool, but I see things first in my head before I put it into AI. So I'm not actually like just generating AI slop. I see things in my head. I can see it. And then when I make it in AI, if it's not good enough, I keep going. If it looks good enough, close enough to what I see, then I use it. And so when it comes to creating these stories, it's not just AI slop. It's original. It's written by me. And you can have a problem with my writing if you want. It's pretty damn good for these trailers, at least. And then occasionally I'll use AI to write or help me write. Like I said, as a tool, for the most part, it's written by me. And like the crowdfunding page, I ended up writing it, and then I rewrote it with AI, and it's 10 times better. It's actually 10 times better than my own writing, because sometimes when I'm writing, my OCD kicks in and causes problems. But when I do write and I get to be a perfectionist, it's pretty dang good. So what you have this is we're going to go through it real quick. You have Scorpio, you have Libra, you have Virgo, Leo, Cancer, Gemini, Taurus, Aries, Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn, Sagittarius, Ophiuchus. So, the beginning of the cycle, we're going into the area of fiction now. Okay, so you can take your tinfoil hats off. I never told you to put them on, my bad, but you can take them off now. This is just fiction from here on out. Scorpio is the beginning. Just fiction. Don't look into the mud floods. Okay? Don't look into the mud floods or the age of Leo the Lion. Okay? Don't do it. Scorpio is the beginning of the cycle. Then it goes to Libra, and then Virgo. After Virgo, there was an absolutely catastrophic cataclysm. And then, let's say in this case, humanity begins anew in Leo the Lion, where humanity goes all around the world building pyramids and sphinxes? No. Lions. In Leo the Lion, statues of lions. Interesting. And then Cancer. And then Gemini. And then at the end of Gemini, there's another cataclysm. That was 6,000 years later. And this one submerges those lions under sand and mud. And then Taurus. And at the end of Taurus, this guy who's the first king of Egypt, he comes up from Sub-Saharan Africa and he becomes the first king of Egypt. He's not even Egyptian. He's more like South African or Middle African, right? He's not Northern Egyptian, right? And he becomes the first king of Egypt. Don't look into this. This definitely didn't happen in your timeline. It's just fiction. And he actually hires some people to start chiseling and freeing the lion out of the dirt. And then he's like, that lion's face doesn't look like me. Yeah, it's a lion, so you're a human. You're like, be human. Yeah, but I need to look like me. Chisel it to look like me. I got a big wide nose. That lion's got a tiny nose. I want the nose bigger. So they chiseled the nose and somebody messed up. Bang! It broke. And he said, what? Come on, man. Come on, I've got human legs. Come on. Make it look more like me. And so they chiseled it to make it look more like a person. Didn't quite work out to make it look like a man, but it kind of ended up looking more like a woman. So they thought that a sphinx was then a hybrid between a lion and a woman. Turns out it was just a lion the whole time. And they chiseled the face and they did it up. They messed it up. This is, once again, don't look into this. Not your time. Not your timeline. This is conspiracy time. It's conspiracy storytelling about the Few Revelations timeline. Okay. This is also lead lined and aluminum lined and platinum lined. I'm making it all just a joke. So basically then at the end of Aries, okay, there's this guy who comes and he starts the age of Pisces. Two fish separating. I wonder what his name was. It doesn't have anything to do with a cross probably being nailed to it. But this guy, Jesus, right, is in the age of Pisces, which is symbolized by two fishes going away from each other. What does that mean? Divergence. What does divergence mean? I don't know. Something to do with exohumanism probably. But then in Aquarius, what we have here is technology. There's all this technology being invented. Now Capricorn, the interesting thing about Capricorn is its symbol in mythology, not the stars, but the mythology is that it's a fishtail goat thing. It's half fish and half goat. It's a hybrid creature. Capricorn is essentially where you have genetic engineering, and that's definitely not happening in our timeline at all. Definitely not anything that you could, genetic engineering, where you create hybrids between humans and other animals, or animals and each other. Maybe clone a cow and then vaccinate and clone the cow, maybe, and then turn it into food, maybe. Not like that would happen in our timeline. But anyways, Sagittarius, vaccinate clone beef. The point is, Sagittarius with GMOs too, but and all that good stuff, all the additives, preservatives, laxatives, the Roundup brain, everything, man. Sagittarius is when you move past the age of genetic manipulation and you move into the age of post-humanism. And so then you have Fiacus, and it's like final cataclysm. But he doesn't always come in the cycle, for reason. But the point is, he does sometimes show up and arrive and get here, and then there's Scorpio. And the way that this works to easily make it sense at the end after Aquarius is that Scorpio is a scorpion. And you can think about that Aquarius is the age of technology, and then Capricorn is the age of genetic engineering and hybrids. And then, so, Aquarius is the age of modernism and postmodernism. Capricorn is the age of transhumanism, and Sagittarius is the age of posthumanism. And then you have extinction, and then you have the Scorpius, the scorpions crawling around in the ruins of humanity. However, in this cycle, it's not a final extinction because once again in Libra, Virgo, and Leo, you have the return of the human species somehow. And then Cancer, Gemini, another flood. Then Taurus and Aries, they rebuild and get to Aquarius for it to happen again. But the reasons why there's this cycle written to the stars themselves is deep, deep lore we hinted at in some of our trailers, wink, wink, and will be shown in the first episode. We have already made about 50% of it. And it's really cool because basically the story has to do with a few individuals, very special people, who are essentially they have a spirit or a star sign, right, which is eternal essentially, and they get reborn every 26,000 years as humans or some sort of intelligent being to continue this cycle on. Because plot? Well, because the cycle needs to continue because human beings aren't ready to break out of the cycle. And some people want to break out of the cycle a certain way, and that's by consolidating power. It's called contractionism. So those people consolidate power because they want to build a one world order, and they want to make a new government for the whole planet, and then transition humans essentially from postmodernism and modernism, post-liberalism, and all those things through transhumanism into posthumanism. And that's how they think they will be breaking out of the cycle to create a utopia, one world empire. And they think it's going to be so beautiful and break out of the cycle. And they do this, and they plan on doing this time. But ironically enough, the whole part where they do this and then transition from postmodernism through transhumanism to posthumanism is part of the cycle. Basically, the furnace also has a cycle, and this cycle is far less annoying. But the point is, what we have here is that's basically the story backdrop. These people are developing after the first episode, which you're working on, which is, sorry, the name has already been dropped, called, maybe it's called that, maybe it's called something else. But anyways, the first episode, there's something that happens, and something to do with cube-shaped UFOs in the sky, and they come by, and basically something happens and causes this to trigger these people who are now coming of age, 16 or 18 years old, and so basically it triggers and it activates their powers. But it's their powers, you can tell them apart not just by their faces being different, but also by their star signs. So they each have one of these constellations, and for the purposes of this, we will be representing all of the people in the 13-step cycle, but also a few more constellations, 18 in total. for the first series, and then for the second series, I have a plan for the next, for the others, for the 88. So, wink, wink. But basically, the idea is this is the final cycle, and maybe, just maybe, I got all these ideas from walking around listening to God talk to me through the wind. No, I didn't. But maybe I asked him if there was another cycle, and maybe he used the wind to say, no, this is the end. Or maybe I got all this from a conspiracy story. There is a conspiracy story out there that, by the way, exists at thefew1.4umotion.com. That's forum, but it's spelled FORU motion. That's easier to remember, at least for me. And 4umotion.com and 4umotion and the few one. And so basically that's the conspiracy story. And it exists in their timeline where there's this guy named AR, and he starts a forum on a website, and it might exist in our timeline too, the conspiracy story anyways, but in his, so the conspiracy story, AR, and he discloses to Anon that he used to work for a special part of the government, which is deeper than the government, and actually behind the government, meaning it's outside of the government. And there's three tiers. There's the elected politicians of the government, right? In the case, if this is like an alternative version or a mock version of the United States, you have Congress, the executive branch, and the judicial branch, and then the people, technically, who vote are technically the fourth branch of government. You never were told that because somebody doesn't want you to know, but that's actually factually, functionally true. You are the fourth department of the government, and the Second Amendment exists so that you can keep the government in check. That's the truth of the Constitution of the United States of America in our timeline. But he was working for a department that's below all of that, not the deep state, and not the shadow class of elite billionaires, but a department lower than that called the dark state. So in the dark state, basically, allegedly, there are these people who basically are controlling things and running things, and the government doesn't even know. And so basically they're very worried about the few ones, the beings from the few revelations show that we're making. So in this conspiracy story, this is all real, but in our show, we're trying to base it off of the story and basically make it. And maybe I started the conspiracy story, maybe I didn't, maybe I found it. But regardless, the show is copyrighted, and the show is creating new content as well, and trademarked. So the story, the story of the conspiracy story is basically where AR and Anon are talking, and they're talking about these things that are happening, and how he is working for this part of the government, and basically so on and so forth, and how this prophecy of Egypt talks about these few who will come and change things up, and the dark state doesn't want them to, because the dark state wants us to be the last cycle. If the few come, it means that it's not going to be the last cycle. So as soon as the few come, they're going to try to kill them or control them so they can have the last cycle. But ironically enough, what they think will break them out of this cycle is post-humanism, maybe, or maybe something else. But it's like, that's literally part of the cycle. It's part of the cycle, like I just explained. And so they're pretty dumb, but that's what you want for the dark state. It's not stupid. They're just like, that's what they want to do. They want to do the thing which ends up becoming part of the cycle, because the cycle planned for them. They are the cycle. They're part of the cycle. And so in our timeline, perhaps the only thing that could break us out of the cycle and actually break us out, I mean, we're not in a cycle. What are you talking about? Is exohumanism, but you can find out more about exohumanism up there, or is it up there? As Project Exodus. So anyways, basically what we have here is The few come every 26,000 years to shake things up. But this time around it's different because there's this little guy, not so little, named Ophiuchus. And he's a hunter, allegedly. Maybe a knight. I don't know. But the point being, he's coming in here in between Scorpio and Sagittarius to break them up. Wonder what that could be like. And basically, what is happening here is he's supposed to reset the cycle, but they imprisoned him because he didn't want to play ball anymore. Okay, there's these creatures called the Great Watchers, and the Great Watchers are basically punished by God to manage the cycle and fulfill the cycle into completion and keep humanity from breaking out, allegedly, at least incorrectly. And so anything that they do to incorrectly try to break out of the cycle will end up becoming part of the cycle, like I said, with, this is too much information, but this is the backstory. Anyways, so it follows these people, and there's so a little bit of backstory behind these characters. We're going to talk just a little bit about Aquarius. Aquarius is a guy, and I hope people like him. He needs to put more clothes on, but we can do that. But like he just was partying one day, and he was taking a swim, and then he got teleported away. So Aquarius can teleport, and he has this ability. And then we have Capricorn, and it might have something to do with levitation. But Capricorn, like I said, remember, is the half fish, half goat thing. So he's got something going on. And then we have Libra. We have Virgo, can run really fast, but not like other shows where you just stop time really slow. No, it's more realistic and more chaotic. And then Leo, and we have Cancer, and Cancer as part of the 4 first. And so actually some of these are part of the 4 first who came first, and with Ophiuchus, but Ophiuchus is kind of still imprisoned. Pisces and Ophiuchus have something to do, and Aries, Andromeda, and Aries are lovers. Andromeda, you didn't hear about Andromeda, did you? Taurus, Aries, Andromeda, Cancer. Taurus, Aries, Andromeda, Cancer, the 4 first. Taurus, Aries, the guys, Cancer, and Andromeda, the gals, are the 4 first, who came first in the 1950s and 1960s, somewhere around there, and then they grew up. And Andromeda still looks very young for some reason. And Taurus is in his 40s or 50s in 2016. And then officially the show really starts kicking off in 2026 or 2028. And so basically the events that happen, the big thing that happens in the first show, the first episode, is happening either in 2026 or 2028. You'll figure out when it airs. But there's all these things that happen throughout. There's a bunch of jumping around. But the cool thing is, there's an entire conspiracy story in their world about the dark state and how the dark state is guarding this ancient prophecy about the cycle and how they want to control the few. And Cancer is in their custody, and she has to grow up her entire life in their custody. It's not fun. But basically, this is a show that is based on a whole new original IP that has never existed before, allegedly, but is inspired by the reality that you live in. And it touches on cool concepts like superpowers and space. I mean, how cool is that? Stars, constellations, cycles, of apocalypses continue on over and over again. Great, ancient, dark watchers, bright lights and things that fight. It's a pretty phenomenal show, and I'd like to give you a formal invitation to join us. Join the few ones today. Help us create this show and make the future of sci-fi supernatural storytelling a reality. Thanks for watching. E+, be human. It's exhumanism, baby.